Hey everybody, I'm Corey Sandiford, political analyst alongside my co-host Luke, and we want to welcome you to the Better BIM podcast of 2026. Better BIM is a by the people, for the people concept that started in 2013. It's had different incarnations, but the one passion it's always carried is the passion of Barbadian young people for a better Barbados through our political affairs. And I think you would agree there's always room for Barbados to be better. Maybe you just bought your first car and you're concerned about the current state of our roads. Maybe you just had your firstborn and you're concerned what Barbados' economy will look like for the next 5 years. For you to be able to make ends meet for you and your family and still have some savings for a rainy day. That's what this podcast will be about. The issues that will be leading us into our next elections here in Barbados. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you know my voice and you know Luke's, the same passion that burns in us burns in you as young people wanting better for Barbados. So with that being said, welcome, Luke. You ready to go? You ready to stir this pot further?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, as you know, it's the end of 2025. We're looking forward to 2026. Elections are in the air. There's plenty that's been going on politically in Barbados. So really, this first show is just to give our audience a sense of the goings on and the flavor, because I think as young people in Barbados, we know stuff is happening, but especially in this current climate, there may be reasons to want to tune out at times, and we don't want everybody to tune out. We want everybody to tune in and be locked in and to know what's going on, because their issues that are important. What are your thoughts to get us going in this convo?
I really do, just as you say, want to get young people. I think there's a hunger for that type of knowledge, that type of connection, these types of conversations around politics, around the social fabric of Barbados, around being able to discuss what's going on in the country, especially as we lead up to the 2026 election. That is, many people have it slated on the cards to be called early. So we want to be able to discuss these issues, to have these conversations, and really and truly just provide a space for people to be able to talk and be able to talk with us. Have these conversations amongst ourselves, among the people of our generation, for the younger people and as well for the older people and the people within the diaspora.
The question at this point is not even whether it will be called early, really is how early in 2026 will we have it. But I want to look back today at 2022, our last elections, because as we said, sometimes elections stir a lot in Barbados. To me, in Barbados, elections are the closest thing that we have to crop over. Although I know the two vibes are different, but yet they're the same in some ways in terms of the level of excitement and activity going on around the island at any one time. But, this is political fanfare as opposed to musical, a festival. But there's still a festive element to elections in Barbados. But with that being said, what are your memories of 2022? If we could go back there for a minute, what stands out to you of that election, and how has it changed things to the point that we are here now heading into 2026?
2022, correct me if I'm wrong, Verla was the head of the DLP.
Correct.
Leading into that election, and the DLP was still very much scattered following the defeat in 2018. And it was a mishmash of politics, really and truly. There was Verla on one side, there was the older guard, the Michael Ashley, the Richard Seeley on the other side. So it didn't feel completely like a well-oiled machine going up against the BLP, which felt very, very well-oiled. And then the DLP were not able sufficiently to convince the electorate of why they should be elected back, and to put forward a altogether face to the public of showing that they could really resume governance that they had lost in 2018. So that is, and then this is especially coming off of the heels of COVID, where people, I think we were still a bit in the final tail.
Just a bit. I don't want to interrupt you. I don't want to cross you, but my inner cynic, which is really as well. My outer cynic is just here scoffing because you're putting things nicely since we're on a podcast. And call a spade a spade. Any day. We had lockdowns right up until the November, and I don't know if you remember, but we became a republic at 12 a.m. on the 30th of November 2021, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. So we were having lockdowns for the pandemic right up until that point. The elections were called another month later, at the end of December. And then the lockdowns that we were having, and I don't want to stick on this too long, but I'm just making the point that we were still in the throes of the pandemic and we were still having lockdowns. But then somehow magically in that time when we were becoming a republic, they managed to hold off of they either push back the timing of the lockdown for that night or they removed it completely. And then next thing you know, somewhere towards the end of I say lockdown, I really mean curfews is what I mean. Wrong word, wrong choice. So we were having curfews for being indoors by a particular time. And then by the end of December, we kind of phased those out completely just so that we could have campaigning. So COVID-19 pandemic in Barbados, both from a practical on the ground standpoint and both in terms of how the government was having to respond to the issues at the time, the ruling party, the BLP, was having to respond to the issues at the time that completely overshadowed everything going into the 2022 election. And to say that we had a mishmash of, you were saying that it was a mishmash of politics. I remember the proposed vaccine mandate. That was a huge issue for the BLP going into the election, and everybody's question mark was not how many seats they would lose. Not whether they would lose seats, but how many seats they would lose. That was the question on people's mind when they had conversation with me. And they kept telling people, well, none, and nobody would believe me. And here we are now today. So what do you see with regard to that scenario versus now? Because to me, the Dems aren't any less of a mishmash now than they were then. If anything, they're more of a mishmash now because there's been more public infighting. Say what you want about Verla's stewardship, but she was actually at least keeping the house in order apart from having internal challenges to her leadership, like, actual leadership contest. But there's nothing wrong with that. At least it's legitimate. It's not locking people outside of the party during AGM. So what do you see then versus now? I've talked a mouthful, but I want to hear your thoughts. I'm going to put it more candidly because I want soft things for the people. I want to talk about it how it is.
I'm just trying to be, polite, put things forward in a
we both know that isn't you
type of way.
We both know that isn't you, so don't do it.
But yes, I do agree with you that the state of affairs as it relates to the opposition now is even more, for want of a better word, dissolute than it was before.
What makes it more dissolute?
I think because it was one thing when it was Verla and Ronnie and those who didn't have a seat in Parliament in the lower house. But then there's a different story now when you do have somebody with a seat, and this is where Ralph came in and threw off everything, because then he came in initially just as the political leader, but then sought to just be party leader as a whole, and then that led to the internal power struggle between him and Ronnie, and that's why it ended up with people getting locked out of the AGM because the DLP camp got divided right down the middle. And I mean, the BLP really didn't have to do much at that point and finger and say, look what's going on over there. Do you want these people to lead you? So it really was just ended up being a real sad state for the DLP. And then it ended up in a much worse situation now because the party never has seemingly recovered. And then now with Ralph going over to, what's the EC running in St. Joseph?
St.
John, not contesting, what was that, Christchurch South?
You used to be Christchurch South, yeah.
Yeah, it's Christchurch South. It looks even crazier now because you've abandoned your seat for a completely new seat. So what was
the easy seat?
The easy seat, the DLP stronghold, quote unquote, up in St. John. Looking to retain your seat in the House of Parliament, but for all intents and purposes, it could easily end up being another 30-0 because there are no stronger candidates on the field. Michael Lashley has now gone over to the BLP. There's nobody else. I don't see Richard Seeley coming back. I haven't seen him really.
I've seen him show up in pictures that when they're talking about the slate of candidates. I think he's supposed to be running somewhere.
Oh wow!
But I mean, we've in talking about the DLP jumped to what I intended to deal with last. We jumped to it first, but maybe that's a good thing. I mean, I want to follow the conversation where it goes naturally, and in this case, we have been talking now for years about the ruling party being the BLP, and people have their reasons now for wanting to support the BLP or not wanting to vote at all. And that's really, to me, the bigger conversation going into this election, where people seem to only see one party to vote for if they're going to vote. And are people actually going to turn out to do something different and vote, or are they just going to let things happen? Because many assume that the outcome of the election is a foregone conclusion. And the only question mark being, again, will the BLP lose any seats this time? Will Ralph Thorne get in St. John now that he gone up over there to run in the quote-unquote easy seat? But let's talk about the DLP a little bit, because to me, we've been focusing so heavily on BLP because they are the government. But the whole reason that the 30-0 situation exists, or 29-1, is because of the DLP. And it's, I can't call this dissolution, that would be very unkind, but just the state of where it is now, the disorganization of it, what happened in 2018 and the fact they've not been able to recover up to now. You mentioned Ronnie in passing, and I want to talk about him for a minute, because I think in Ronnie, I want to get your take on him, but I think in Ronnie, people saw someone that represented what they wanted to see from the Democratic Labour Party. You had 2018, the voters washed away the party, and come back in 2022, you didn't improve to the point where we could take you seriously, so we washed you away again. And then in the wake of the 2022 election, you have Ronnie taking the helm, and I do think that when Barbadians voted out who they voted out, in 2018, they wanted to see a whole fresh new face from the Democratic Labour Party. I almost said written. It's been riding on Errol Barrows' coattails for these many years, but they have so many voters who either do not know who Errol Barrows is, but they know so little about him as for his legacy not to really matter enough to their vote. I mean, why should it in 2025 or 2026? Point being, they saw in Ronnie someone that they wanted to see in the Democratic Labour Party in terms of somebody who's young, who's qualified, who's bright, who appears to have a future, and who brings a freshness, who brings a fresh new face to the politics. And he lasted, 2 years? Anyhow, talk to me about Ronnie and tell me what you saw there, and then the switch over to Ralph and what has come with that switch.
Hey.
I just love how we call him by first names.
And that's why I was just muting out of my top. I was like, this is Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, you know?
Ralph Thorne.
So it's like, yeah, Dr. Yearwood was, as you say, he really was the new face of the party. Most people don't know anything about Barrow beyond seeing him or the pictures of him on the Garrison holding up the flag, 1966, you know, they changed to independence, the father of independence. Like, what do you know him as? Most people don't know him being called the Dipper. You might maybe know that he's out of St. Lucie. You know the mirror image speech, you know, friends of all, satellites of none.
What does this mean to you?
And then what is this in a, as you say, 2026 context, far less a 2022 one, because it's like, yes, this was a man who was a great statesman. By the end of the day, it was like, that legacy isn't big enough to carry over to influence the election in the modern day, you know. And he was I think he was the reason that we have education. That education is free now in that system. And again, these are great policies, great stuff that he's done. I mean, he's done some quote unquote bad stuff like the Public Order Act of 1970, but it's like he's done some fantastic stuff. But all this is in the past. It's like 30, 40 years from now.
Most of us weren't born.
Exactly. Most of us weren't born. 30, 40, 50 years from now, people from the BLP saying, oh, Mia Mottley was so great. And it's like, what do we know about Mia Mottley beyond? She was there with the Republic. She carried the country through COVID. She won
that thing that happened.
Exactly. All that stuff that happened way back then. You know, it's like you only see pictures. You might maybe see a sign on the ground still left over for, like, say, 6 feet apart. It's like you don't have any real world context in the modern day. So it's the same with Barrow. So I say all this to say that Dr. Yearwood did represent a brand new, a fresh face for the party. It felt like a restart. It felt like a reset. It was something different. It was moving away from particularly the nastiness of 2018 election. There's still a clip floating around with like Dennis Lowe basically washing him out on Mia and saying all kind of nasty things. And the way that people's stomach turned after that election towards the DLP, because it's like, yeah, this kind of washing him out on people on a political platform, this is all well and good. This is all well fun and games, but it's like we have real serious issues to deal with. And this was pre-pandemic. So it's like we have social issues to deal with. We have cost of living. We have different crises, you know, to deal with, the direction of the country as a whole. There was the sinking we kept getting downgraded. Like, what are we doing about that? Where are we going from here? There's the sewage on the South Coast.
People were very distressed at the time.
We're
Very emotional.
it was a very emotional time. It felt very much like the country was really crumbling around the edges. So,
Rudderless, just kind of like meandering out there and not sure where we're getting at.
Frondell in a ivory tower, sitting out looking through the window, ain't got nothing to say. And you know, so it was like, it felt, the country was completely unbalanced, you know. So then it's, you come out of that period, obviously you have the Mia Mottley, but then you still want, systems need balance. You need a counterweight to that. And Dr. Yearwood presented such balance, you know, the hope of a new beginning, you know, very much a new hope, but it's like, he had a real Sisyphean task to push that rock of the DLP up the hill.
Sisyphean? Oh, okay, you're going to explain. Okay.
Yes, Sisyphean. You know, obviously the story around Sisyphus, that Greek, he was what, a demigod?
I don't remember that detail. I'm just making sure that
there is no way. It's cursed by Zeus to push a rock up a hill, and then when it gets to the top of the hill, at the end of the day, the rock rolls back down. So he has to go back down and push it back up, and that's his lot to do every day, constantly pushing that rock up the hill for it to roll back down. So Ronnie, it felt very much like that. You pushing this rock of the DLP up a hill, and then you get to the top, and then some kind of knucklehead appears and says something stupid, and the rock rolls all the way back down to the bottom, and then people don't see the DLP as ever really progressing. And the progress feels piecemeal, if anything. It doesn't feel real, because it's constantly rolling back down the hill, because it never really managed to emerge out of that kind of swamp that it found itself in after 2018 and after 2022 again. But there was still hope. But yeah, you had some real wildcats like Tyra Trotman, those that you get the little clips that come out on social media, and it just gave echoes of, again, 2018, 2022 election, of just not a focus on issues necessarily, but just using the platform to swipe at candidates. What was that lady too? Dr. Armstrong, who that was the 2018 election. Yes, Dawn Marie.
Okay, I know her less well.
Yes, I think her campaign got derailed completely, and she was sounding pretty good on sports, sounding good on education, but her campaign basically derailed itself based on the comments she made on Mia Mottley, because it then again felt like a reaction of 2018. So it's like, what are we doing back here again? Where was like the comments on childlessness and all that type of stuff. And it's like, and yeah, comments that question her womanhood. So it's like, again, what are we doing here? Because this is all well and cute. This is all well and fun. Politicians are not above criticism, are not above, you know, again, getting them out washing on the platform. However, we have real issues, and we have a pandemic. We have different issues. We still had the downgrades going on. No, we didn't have the downgrades going on. I think they had stopped by then. But obviously, you're looking at a country that was on an upward trend. And it's like, if it's on an upward trend, how can you take it further up? What plans do you have for it to go forward? Like, why should we put you in and have the fear that it could take an about turn when we could stick with who we know and keep going upwards?
All right. So you said a lot, but I let me see if I could. You give me a lot of food for thought that I want to respond to, but I want to like see if I could encapsulate everything. I know on cuss on our podcast, so let me say ish. There's a lot of ish that Ronnie came in and had to deal with, and there's a lot of ish that any political leader or anyone that hopes to achieve anything politically is always going to have to deal with. And my sense is that Ronnie came across, and if, let's say in an ideal world, he could be left to himself and just do what he had to do and just use his acumen and just have people, the right kind of people advising him and just proceed in that way, I think he could have been very effective. I think that Ronnie is extremely bright. I know him personally, and that's the individual I've always known him to be. However, I think that in being perceived to be a BLP person coming over to the DLP, he came across, and well, I mean, the question mark will always be the extent to which the influencers, so to speak, in the party, how much effect they were having on him in terms of, you know, you take 2 steps forward and then having to take 2 back because this person think that you're doing things the wrong way, or to think that when you're doing it one way, you have an agenda. Sorry, I say you, let's say Ronnie specifically, that he has an agenda because he's perceived to be a BLP person. So you might be doing something good, but because it does not sash with what other people in the party think, they think that you're doing something untoward or something for your own personal gain because you're perceived to be BLP. But I also think about the rank and file of the party, and I think that they too had issues with Ronnie, and it would have been easy to coming over for the Bs. So anybody in the party that was an influencer to put word out against Ronnie and grab hold of the psyche of the rank and file because Ronnie was perceived to be BLP. So it's easy to turn the party against him, so to speak, because he's perceived in that way. Enter Ralph Thorne in early February of 2024. I wanted to give him a chance, see what he had to say. But I think that listening to you just now talk about Dawn Marie Armstrong, I think he has the same problem that she had, that Verla de Pisa had. All of them cannot resist this temptation to focus on Mia Mottley herself,
Right.
and opposition politics, so to speak. And to be perfectly honest, Luke, I don't think that Barbadians are interested in hearing Democratic Labour Party opposed. I think that if I ask a man on the streets now, they'll be very interested in this idea of democracy and having somebody speak out about the issues. But I don't know if people on the streets think as sophisticatedly as to want to separate the two. Because when Ralph Thorne speaks out about the Barbados Labour Party in the way that it's doing things, and he is representing the Democratic Labour Party, and in the minds of Barbadians, the Democratic Labour Party was still the quote-unquote force that took us back. You still have the legacy now of Donville Innes and what happened to him after getting voted out of office in terms of going through the legal system of the United States and all that kind of thing. That is now that government's legacy, that Democratic Labour Party's government, that is their legacy. So when they criticize and they oppose, which people in theory want to see happen, they don't ultimately want to hear that coming from the Democratic Labour Party. I don't want to hear you talking about what the BLP is doing wrong, because I saw you do much worse, much worse. And you lied to my face, and you told me that if I go on the street and I protest against what is that I'm doing, I go on the streets and protest against what you're doing, that all I'm going and doing is burning calories and blah, blah, blah. I could go down the line with that government.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people want to hear that from them. I think that what people want to see Democratic Labour Party do is define itself to be something, to give itself some kind of a brand. And to be honest, to get back to Ralph Thorne, I don't think he's interested in giving a brand. I have not seen anything from Ralph Thorne that makes me think that he is interested in establishing any kind of party politics. I think he crossed the floor because he wanted his 15 minutes of fame, and he's in his 60s, I believe. And I don't think that he saw a future for himself remaining in the Barbados Labour Party, and he asked himself, am I going to stay across here now, get voted in for another term in 2026, presumably, and still continue to remain on the backbenches, or do I get myself a national platform where I can be seen to be speaking out on issues? I actually seem to have something important to say, and take all not the accolades so much, but all the adulation, that's the word I'm looking for, that comes with that, seemingly from the people who think that you're speaking out in interest in the country. So now, having done all that for almost 2 years, I nearly said 18 months, but it's a little bit longer than that, because let's say the election is in February, he will have had 2 years in that kind of role.
Substantive post.
Yes. And now the proof will be in the pudding. Ultimately, will voters vote for you? If you go to St. John now, if Ralph Thorne goes to St. John now, having done all the things we just said, and spoken out, and having that national platform that we talk about, and opposing and speaking out of issues of interest and importance to Barbadians, will he now win that easy seat that he is quote unquote supposed to win as a Democratic Labour Party candidate over there? Because if he doesn't, it's going to look really freaking bad. That's going to be really embarrassing for him. Yeah. But he would have had his 15 minutes. I don't think the party would be any further. I actually think the party is worse now. That's a question mark for me going into this election as an analyst. And I promise to look back at the St. James North by-election performance of this year. I did not, admittedly, so that'll be something for our next episode to look forward to see what the swing was, to see if the Democratic Labour Party is performing better now than they did in 2022 and in the by-election of 2020, to see if they've improved, because I don't have a sense that they have. And the question mark really is not whether people will be supporting the DLP, it's more so whether they will be voting at all. So in talking about that now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the government and what the issues are on the table. We know that this government is not perfect. No government is. However, I want to talk to you about like what some of the major. I want to get a sense of you. I'm asking you for two things. What, when you talk to people, because I know you talk to a wide cross section of people on a daily basis as an influencer in our streets, what are some of the underlying themes in terms of people's current grosses, in terms of what's going on in Barbados, if the country headed in the right direction and that kind of thing? And then the other thing we'll ask you about is some of the major controversies that this government has had in terms of some of the policies it's attempted to bring, and kind of the opposition is not the word that I want, but the controversy. Let me just stick with that word surrounding some of the policies that they've tried to bring.
I think definitely for sure the main thing that people are looking for, the main thing that holds their interest is just simply the cost of living. I think it's as simple as the cost of living and the roads. That's because I guess those are things that are right in front of people's faces that they interact with on a daily basis. So it's like, if I could go in the supermarket and something that was $1 before is now $1.50 or $2, obviously, you know, that impacts my bottom line. That impacts the way that I live. That impacts how I eat, you know, because there's less disposable income that's available. You know, you could easily look around. And don't get me wrong, like, these are not things, a lot of these things are not directly controlled by the government. Obviously, they're external forces. We are an open economy. So obviously, anything that happens overseas, like, let's say with the US and tariffs, we will be affected by it. But at the same time, it's like, when you compare, let's say, the cost of living in Barbados to the cost of living, let's say, arguably in Trinidad or St. Vincent or St. Lucia, whereas these countries have a much lower cost for fuel, much lower cost to buying food. And it's like, we are stones throw apart. Like, why is there such a large discrepancy? Yes, obviously, we live in a very advanced society with a number of policies that provide for people in terms of healthcare, in terms of the way that the government takes care of people, our social safety net. But at the same time, it's like the cost as is brought to bear feels particularly high, and it obviously always goes up, it never goes down. And these would have been things, again, that would have been impacted from COVID and the pandemic. So it's like, yeah, the state of the roads, because I have a friend from St. George, and she would message me and say, yeah, tell Tony more this road down here, and he fix it, you know. Or we would go to Thirsty Lizard, and she would be like, I talked to you like Cynthia, tell Cynthia fix this road up here. So it's like, it's stuff like that, again, these are just the day-to-day in people's faces that they will be like, this needs doing, I want this done. People in St. Andrew complaining about the state of the roads and stuff like that. And it seems like something so simple, but it would be these really kind of simple things that I wouldn't say a swing election, but would change a voter's mind. I can't even remember the term for it, but these kind of, I don't think everybody is single issue voter down to just like, how is the state of the road in my area? But it's like, these in your face things are, I would say, are quite a concern. And that was the issues that people face, the controversies. Definitely the wiretapping bill is one that comes to mind immediately. There was one recently that I saw the former Senator Tricia Watson and economist Jeremy Stephen talk about. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a bit more complex.
Was it the economic diversification?
There we go. Yes, that bill that Mia came and gave the speech on
a fund.
Right, a fund and how it is. And there were criticisms about it, which is, I think it's good in a democracy that citizens feel empowered enough to come and say, hey, this isn't good enough. Hey, I don't like this. I like this, but you need to refine this. You need to go back to the drawing board with this. And that's, to me, that's fair. I think if we look further back, there was something around that I saw a number of younger lawyers complaining about was it the changes to the Bail Act? Like, if you are found with ammunition and guns, you don't get bail, or you're not able to get bail.
That one I'm less familiar with.
Yeah, there were a number of controversies.
And each time it is when the legislation is tabled. And I think that in Barbados, on average, we're the type of country who has always assumed that we will vote a particular way. So this is before the 2018 and 2022 dispensation in Parliament. This is before we ever had a 30-0. I think that in Barbados, we always assume that we will vote and we will have opposition, and the opposition would be the one because they know, quote unquote, they know what's going on. So they would be the ones to speak out on our behalf and raise issues of concern to Barbadians. And we would kind of just chime in and say, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't agree with that either. I don't think that this thing is right. If you get a vox pop on the streets or any kind of interview like that, you would get the man on the streets thoughts on it. But up until this time now, we assume that someone was out there to advocate for our interests.
Right.
To the point now where you have this 30-0 or 29-1 dispensation, and you have no, I think it looks that much worse for the ruling party, to be honest. If you have an opposition party and you table, you go to present this legislation and debate it, and then you have the debate, and the debate is such as it is and the opposition party speaks out on it, that's one thing. But when you have the advantage such as you have in Parliament, and you go to pass this legislation and you have a senator come in and speaking out about it on social media as though this thing is being done to Barbadians, almost in the dead of the night kind of situation. They're trying to pass this bill quick before anybody speaks out about it or has anything substantive to say about it. I think it looks that much worse in the long run. As you say, are they change of government issues? No, they're not. But I think that there may be a cumulative effect for the Barbados Labour Party. I mean, we have a 30-0 situation. No, I keep calling it 30-0, 29-1. We have a 29-1 situation now, although the 1 did come over from the 30, so I could as well call it 30-0. But that could change in a short space of time. That our politics could look different now. We're going into a 2026 likely election. In the next 4 years, the politics could be substantially different. Will our current Prime Minister, who really represents the strength of the Barbados Labour Party, will she be the one leading the Labour Party into the election in another 4 or 5 years subsequent to this election that we're having now? She came out this year and then said she would be leading the party into this election. I feel like she felt like she needed to say that in order for people to feel that sense of certainty. But if she had to say that, no, what are we looking forward to down the road? Is she going to be staying on with the party? Is she going to be quitting the post sometime midterm, presuming that they win the next election? What are we looking forward to? What's your sense?
I mean, yeah, I well believe that she will stay on for the next election.
The election after this one.
For this one, the third one, obviously she'll be on for the third one. But then also too, I wonder if she will do a fourth term. That is my question. I don't think, I get the idea that PM Mia Mottley is very much by the rules, even though the third term kind of falls on the outside of the rules. You know, it's like you don't want to encounter a situation where it starts to feel, because I mean, she's been accused of being a despot, a dictator. You don't want to really start to encroach on that realm where it feels dictatorial. You will feel that, if anything, just for matters of good taste, she would fade into the background. I would think become like some kind of consultant, you know, some kind of, I don't know, supernumerary that exists in the background of the party.
I find that hard for a politician.
You think that she would cling to power?
I am not saying what she will do because I don't know. And I ain't not going to sit here on this show and speculate towards her future. I'm going to go with what my opinion is based on what I've seen so far. Not just here, but around the Caribbean. And I'm going to speak to a little bit about what the conversation was on the streets in these last few years during this term of government. So what I've seen happen in the Caribbean, it's hard for Caribbean leaders to let go of leadership. Sometimes they stay on too long in leadership, they get voted out, and then they're still sticking around opposition, and then they get voted back in for extra 5 years that really and truly they should not have got. And it makes their party that much worse off for the future when they do then lose office, or when they do then dead when the role of Prime Minister die while they're in office service as Prime Minister. We've seen a little bit of all of that happen in the Caribbean. Right here in Barbados, Barbados died while he was in office.
True. After
he had got voted out, should he have come back and led the Democratic Labour Party into the 1986 elections, having led for all those years before? I don't want to speak too much about him because, you know, that's a little bit in the past, further back than some people may know. But my point is, I think it's hard for Caribbean leaders to let go of that power, because when they let go of that power, what are they going to? What else can float their boat in the same way as being in control of the affairs of an entire country, small as we are? In the same way, there's nothing to leave and go on to.
You know the rumor, right?
What was the rumor?
That she's gonna move on to UN Secretary General.
That's what I'm talking about. That was being talked on the street. All we could do, we don't know anything. All we could do is sit down here and speculate like everybody else. But I did want to talk about the speculation because at the end of the day, this is a 40 people, by the people, 40 people show. So that's something that was being said. Is that something that could happen in the next term? Is that what she is looking to go on and do? And then if she is, what is Barbados beyond the leadership of Mia Mottley? Does everything just go to pot when you don't have that strong sense of leadership? I mean, I hear so much criticisms of it now by this point where we are, but you still know that she's still the quote unquote rock star that she's ever been. She's still wildly popular, and there's some people that she can, for whom she can do no wrong. So I'm not debating that, but at the same time, if Mia Mottley goes on to something else from this post, she herself has spoken out before this conversation that we're having, long before, about this idea of liking term limits and for a prime minister to not, for a person who is in the post of prime minister, not to be prime minister beyond a certain time. So in theory, that's her. But what does she leave and go on to? Is there something that is really going to do it for her, or that she's going to be able to hold the level of profile? Because I do think she enjoys appearing on BBC. I do think she enjoys appearing in Machel Montano's music videos. I do think that she enjoys appearing in places and being seen to be being things and holding this level of profile. In our little Barbados that we quote unquote punch above our weight, she embodies that. And I think she enjoys embodying that and being seen holding hands with, walking with Joe Biden and all those kind of things. I think she loves all of that. What, is there anything that she could leave this post and go on and still hold that level of profile? I don't think so. And then my other question flowing on from that is, if she does, what's the state of our politics? Do we feel the same level of confidence in our economy as we do now? I hear a lot of people complaining about our level of debt and our borrowing and the extent to which our children's children will be carrying this debt that we're incurring now. So that's some of the things that are on my mind. What about you?
I mean, I do get everything that you're saying. Maybe, who knows? Let's say she goes on to UN Secretary General. She fades into the background, and after a certain number of years, like what was it, 5? How long was the new president in? How long was he out of government?
He came out. He would have come out in the election in 2022. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that long ago. And now he's president. So,
and his own man.
Exactly. So
already showing us to be that.
So she could very well end up as president too as well. Although I think that would be quite new in the history of Caribbean democracies, Caribbean republics, that type of thing. But it is a real possibility, because that would give her the space and the mandate to do all the, what you know, describe as grandstanding, like, especially in that space, because she would become that tour de force and now as head of state as opposed to head of government.
That would be an entirely different conversation. She will overshadow whatever prime minister is.
Prime minister is there. She'll
regardless of who it is, she will overshadow. And everybody would think that she behind the scenes really controlling the affairs of Barbados. I mean, we promised to talk a little bit today about the extent to which people who would have opposed the Barbados Labour Party government in economic affairs or on the ground in terms of everyday business, the extent to which some of those people have now appeared as part of the BLP. Let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah. Who are some of these people? What were they saying before versus what the reality is now? And are they saying anything at all?
I mean, well, there was Chris Sinclair.
Well, there was Tony Moore, who you mentioned already.
Right. Yes.
There was, we talked about the extent to which the Barbados Labour Party came out against Mark Maloney and some of the, what was it? You said he had a roundabout where he had built a structure.
Right. It was before the roundabout down by Coverley, where there was the entrance to Coverley kind of stuck out into the highway. So then I can't remember how to identify that. People used to say that, and it wasn't until a lady's car hit it, and I think it flipped and somebody died. I think she lost her child, and that is when it really became a very national issue. And then that's when it changed to the roundabout that is there now in front of Coverley.
Right.
So it's like, but it was very much I remember this was Mia would have been in opposition. She would have campaigned very strongly against it and come out and said, this is wrong, that type of thing, blah, blah, blah. It really kicked up a fuss. And I think a lot of people at the time would have seen her as the reason why, obviously, because she kicked up such a fuss, why the roundabout got built. There was also Tyra Trotman, who was very much like, she was the leader of the Young Dems. So she was basically at the time Ronnie's right-hand woman. They would there was a particular meeting, I think, up in St. John, St. Joseph, where they were working in tandem. And then you fast forward later on to, I think, the general meeting of, it would have been 2024 for the Barbados Labour Party. And there she is, that's out in red. So
these things never cease to amaze me, but then when I see them, I ask myself, why would they amaze me? I mean,
Exactly.
any day, these are people who are in political affairs and they want to be in places of power and influence. So if all the influences are in one place and that's where they end up, having opposed it so strongly just a few short weeks or months before,
right.
should not really surprise me, because at the end of the day, I know where they want to end up and I know where the power and influence lies. And if the Dems aren't doing it, well, let me find myself over here.
If you can't beat them, join them. There's a quote from a reality TV star, Jocelyn, where it's like, get with the winning team hole, So it's very much like that, You gotta get him where it's best for you, which is more politically expedient, because you on the sinking ship with the Democratic Labour Party. So
right, but all of that is what is leading to some of the cynicism at the voter level.
Yes.
Which is where we started out, and which is where I would like to, I guess, bring it home in terms of the conversation that we're here having today. The cynicism of the voter on the streets. He and she are seeing this. They're seeing these matters occur. They're seeing people who seem to have something to say, and the people are either fading into the background conveniently, or they're actually 1 minute they're opposing the government, the next minute they're appearing somewhere in red, and it's like, wait, how that happened? Like, what? Who is going to speak out in my interest? What else is there out there for me? Is either more of this in terms of what has been leading me and governing my affairs so far, or nothing at all. Those are my two choices. So I did predict years ago that the Dems were going to take a while, and not just the Dems. I want to just throw everything in there. We don't have time today to get into smaller parties, but opposition on the whole, it just becomes this kind of like disorganized thing where you have all these different individuals with all these individual concerns and wants coming together, trying to create a force, but they can't organize themselves in the kind of scenario that we have now. And then you have the government. So the people look across and they see disorganization, which is really what the Democratic Labour Party and all the fringe elements around that are right now. It's not anything to vote for. So it's like, do I want to vote for more of the same? And also, is there any value to my getting out of voting? Because we all assume how the outcome of this election is going to be. So am I even going to vote? And that leads to cynicism on the voter side. So where we are now, I kind of predicted this is where we were, the politics were going to head. And by 2026, we seem to be there. Let's call it 7.5 years into the government of the BLP. And at the end of the day, I'm not one who supports not voting, because I don't think people understand that all the ruling party needs is one vote in every constituency and it will still win the election. Quite simply.
That is true.
That's how it is. And I don't think that not voting helps anything. But I also understand people's feeling like my vote is not going to do anything, because even if I vote I don't want to vote for what I don't see to be a credible force in the DLP, and there really isn't anything out there. And that's a conversation about two-party politics, which is bad enough, and I think makes voters cynical at the best of times. And now we become one-party politics, which is an even worse conversation, but we will leave that to a future show. But the cynicism of the voter out there. Any thoughts from you on that?
I mean, like, just as you pointed out, there is a lot of cynicism because people feel very much like it's a one-party state, The BLP holds all the cards, Mia sits above all, that type of thing. But voters don't feel as though there are any alternatives. And that, as you say, will probably lead to a low voter turnout, because it's like, where are we going to go? The DLP isn't a credible threat that like there's nobody putting forward any policies, whether this is individually or collectively. Like let's say Christchurch itself, a Curtis Cave emerges and puts out something really good, but it's that he's one man in one constituency. So it's I can't vote for him up in Christchurch East or whatever.
You know, people don't like to vote when they feel like if the person can get in, but they're not going to have the resources, the government behind them. Was my point of voting for this person?
For you, yeah. Because I mean, their whole critiques on the first past the post system, like I think those critiques came up. Was it in the parliamentary reform, in the constitutional reform, anyway, whatever. But it is a real challenge going into the next election. What the voter turnout will be like, I suspect it will be very low. What was it in last election? 40%. Probably couldn't head down.
I thought it was in the 60s. I could revisit it. I my promise to you, the viewer, is that I will revisit the numbers for the St. James North by election to see how the LP did, and I also revisit the electoral turnout for the 2022 election by the time we have our next show.
Yeah, but everybody believes very much as a foregone conclusion. So, and as you say, people will vote for voting's sake because they believe that voting means something. But I also think within a modern democracy like ours, it can't just be people see their political right, their way of exercising their voice as to be one vote every 4 years. You know, we need to have other mechanisms where people can allow their voices to be heard. And this is something that I think the BLP tried it. Was it after the last election that Mia told her ministers, her constituency representatives that they need to put at least an hour in, what was it, every week to be able to in the office to speak to people. I don't know if that has happened, if that has gained traction, but there need to be particular ways that people can access their elected representatives. Like this is not, again, 1966, where these politicians are seen as some kind of demigods, where it's like inaccessible, and you can't say to the Minister of Water, hey, Minister of the Blue Economy, hey, you know, I have a problem out here. There's, I don't know, oil spill. These cruise ships damage the reef. Like, what are you going to do about that? What are we looking at here? And it's like, or the Minister of Road Works, like that deals with MTW and that type of stuff. It's like, I have a problem down here. We've had a problem with this road down here for the last 10 years. You know, I have a problem with this road in the city that needs patching up. I have a problem with accessibility here, that type of stuff. It's like, it shouldn't be that I have to now come and I have to wait for election to vote you out for my voice then to be heard, because then the system feels like it's failing people. It feels like it's, for want of a better word, a sham. You know, it's like it would feel frustrating to a voter. And then, yeah, for a lot of young people now growing up, this is your first election, but it's like, I don't really have a choice. So I just go into, it feels...
I've only known one thing.
I only know one thing, you know. It will almost feel kind of, I don't know, like North Korea, is that you're going to put a vote.
I don't say that. I can't doing everything via my phone. So if I can't do it via my phone, what's the point of doing it? I got
get my ID and left the house and go down and stand up in the line and
leave work. I got and
somebody call my name. Yeah.
Somebody was telling me for St. James North election, he worked in Christchurch, that he got like leave home during he worked. They either got to stand up in line in the morning before work. This is on voting day. Either got to stand up in the morning in line before work, or go to work, leave Christchurch, drive all the way to St. James North, part of which is in St. Peter, depending on where your polling station is, and vote, and then go back to work immediately. He's like, you just can't be bothered, you know, just like let the chips fall there where they may. I know where they're gonna fall anyhow. So I prefer to do it that way. But I want to talk to you for a minute about I've seen efforts via the electoral office to clean up the voters list. I've seen controversy about that, with people questioning whether their names are prospectively to come off, because some people saw their name appearing as overseas people whose names should not be on the list. I find it interesting that effort is taking place now, because I know somebody who had not lived in Barbados for 30 years and walked in a voting station, voted like nothing had happened in the 2018 election, simply because their name was still on the voters list. It had not been removed. And, you know, the voters list will always have on a lot of it will always have on a lot of dead people. It will always have on people who have passed, their names have not been removed from the voting list, or they live overseas and they no longer vote, and the electoral turnout will always appear lower And it actually is, because you have more names on the list than people who actually are in a position to vote, either by not living here or because they're no longer alive. So you will have it down in the 40s. Let's say you're correct about the last turnout. I don't think it was that low, but let's say it was in the 40s. But in reality, it was much higher a percentage of the people who could actually vote than the list has too many names on it of people who are ineligible to vote. So all of a sudden now, after all these years, yes, it had to happen sometime, but you see this effort now to clean the voters list. I just question why now. I feel within myself like it's to make the turnout appear as flattering as it possibly can, because I feel that it will look bad, quote unquote, and it will stir talk if it turns out being that kind of very low number in the 40s or 30s, because you had all these dead people on the list, as I just talked about. And I feel they're cleaning it now so that the number appears as high as it possibly can appear. I feel that's why that effort is happening now.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, but this is a very, very much a niche idea. I don't think Gen Pop really has crossed their mind. Like I did see a letter from my brother appear from the Electoral and Boundaries Commission. I didn't think much about it, but now that you are presenting that point, I do know it has given rise to a thought that I wouldn't doubt that, because as you say, you are heading into election, people are very cognizant of the optics. I think the BLP is always very cognizant of the optics of how it go look, that you win the election, but you win the election 40% with the annual election, that type of things. And that critics, both internally and externally, would use that as a metric to be able to question whether her election was legitimate, or it was like, people are getting frustrated with you. You're not the icon, the stalwart that you present overseas. There was also a topic that I didn't get to touch on in the what we were last talking about, in that you said that you don't believe in people not voting. I do agree with you there. But my question to you would have been, what do you think about people who use a spoil vote as a tactic to indicate to their representative that they are frustrated with the level of representation that they've gotten?
What I think about it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a waste of time. I think optics matter, as we were just discussing, but specifically to the ruling party that we have here now. But at the end of the day, if they win by one vote in each constituency, what does it matter to them? I back in office for another 5 years, so what your little spoil vote gonna mean to me? They had 30 of them. Okay, so what? What does it ultimately achieve? It's just...
You mean 30 spoil votes? Or what if it raises from 30, it goes up to 150, let's say? You think ultimately...
What was that magic number? If it's 151 versus 150 last time, does it matter more this time than it did last time? What's the magic number?
Maybe you're cynical.
Maybe I am, but I think politicians are too. That's the whole thing. I work in politics, so if I'm a cynic, that's partially what makes me cynical. I think we only got a couple of minutes left. Let me just check with our producer. 7 minutes left. So
yeah, we don't have to detract too much time speaking about sport. I do think you've brought your point very much across about it.
I don't want to call the election. I want you to call when you think it might happen.
You heard the latest thing on the street is that people saying January 20th.
But anybody could pull a number out.
Anybody could pull a number. But that was the last.
Like 150 spoil votes versus 151.
Right. God. So cynical.
But we had it January 15th last time.
I can't remember.
I think it was somewhere around there. January 20th would be the day before Errol Barrow Day. So it's all nice and tidy, and then you get
bank holiday
day off.
Oh my gosh, wait, that's true, because that would be quite something, because it's like you already supposed to get the bank holiday. So normally after election, you get the day off, So
let me ask a question. Did the Prime Minister call a press conference last time? So that kind of gave the man on the streets a chance to say, something happening, it's probably going to be that. Mm-hmm. She called a press conference last time, right?
So I would like to say so.
So my thing is the 30th of December. I think if there was going to be a press conference today, we would know by now. Probably isn't going to be tomorrow. That puts us on the 1st. And I think that when you call the Prime Minister calls the election, she has to give a minimum of 21 days for the election to actually take place. So I don't know that she could call it on the 1st, for example, for the 20th. I think that would put it just short.
A little too tight.
I do think that the Prime Minister is very strategic. I want to talk about the Prime Minister's strategy on another day, but are you with the man on the streets? What do you, Luke, feel?
I wonder if it might be that the 20th day is just the day that she appears and says there is going to be election in the near future.
I honestly did believe myself that it was going to be in January.
Yeah.
I felt she was going to either call it Boxing Day or the day after, not Boxing Day, maybe day after Boxing Day for January, or call it in the first week of January, which could still happen, for the end of January. January 20th sounds like a nice tidy date, but I could be wrong, but that was my feeling, that it was going to be in January of 2026. You seem to feel like it might be a little bit later.
No, I feel like the election itself, I feel like it might occur somewhere in February, March. You want, give people enough time for all the election machinery to wind up, not too long, but just enough, like maybe a 2-month period.
What was this election machine? The election machinery being winding up. You tell me about that too. That being winding up.
Like late stage election machinery, the posters coming out, the rallies, the people able to kind of eat a food from it, get the vendors coming out.
We got my constituency representative office called me the other day to make sure that I would be voting or whatever, and my contact information was still the same. We got people who are winning the candidacy for the seat that they ran in to run for the party, and within a week they're on the ground making sure that people are on the voters list. These are things that are actually happening in Barbados. So yes, the machinery has been turned. It's not about to start. It has been activated.
The late stage stuff, the late stage, the rallies, the things on the ground, the same hype that you talk about that feels like crop over. Like that is what I am looking for now to come, or that there's space created for that, so that there's that type of mini crop over feel that begins and ends before the season of crop over actually begins. So wrapping up by March kind of neatly ties it up for the season of crop over then to kick off for like late March, early April.
All right. Well, with all of that being said, I want to bring our convo to a close by looking to the future. We have a lot to talk about. We got a lot to put on the table, and hopefully we'll be having a lot of guests through here too to bounce some of our ideas off of as we, I can't even say wind down towards the election, like ramp up towards the election. And we have our convos for issues that should be important to young Barbadians, because I know people feel some kind of way. But I want to know, like, not only what people are feeling, but like draw their interest out. And that's what we're hoping to do with these conversations. So I'm looking forward to continuing to converse with you. I'm looking forward to digging deeper on some of these issues that we really just touched on today. But as we said at the beginning, this conversation was just to get us back into the flow, get us back into the electoral conversation, because people see things happening, but they don't, and they have a sense of what they mean. But I guess maybe kind of like be the go-between between the things that people see happening in the news and then the actual people, because they see things happening, but they don't know how they should relate to them, or they don't even know if they're going to vote in this instance. So we hope to be that going forward. And I want to thank you for having this conversation today. Your thoughts before we head out?
I mean, yeah, that's very much, I want this to very much be a space, a vehicle for these types of conversation to occur in the wind up towards the next election, for, I guess, just as a kind of lightning rod for intelligentsia and regular people of Barbados to be able to have these conversations, because we don't really have any more of these forums anymore. We want, let's say, the comment section of one of these posts to be able to generate some type of conversation for people to be able to think about, what does the election mean for me? How does it shape for the rest of the country? Like, how do things break down, and not think about things in silos, but a much larger picture. And yeah, have these conversations about the future.
I mean, really, people could reach out to you with the questions.
I guess so. Yes, I would say so. Yes, I would love to field people's questions and hear their thoughts and see what it is that they're thinking. I'm taking a wider variety of views, because obviously you and I don't know everything.
Right, bring those into the conversation. We're very willing to do that. I just want to point out, this is not brass tacks. This is not brass tacks. This is its own thing. This is by the people for the people. I've been your political analyst, co-host Corey, with Luke, your activist influencer. We look forward to chatting next time, bringing more issues to you.